I'm Kent Myers.
I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for The Verdict.
As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Myers. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, and as always, I am joined by one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers, and today we're taking an Oklahoma focus on terrorism in America and what we can do to stop it.
Yes, today we're doing something different than we have done before. As our regular viewers know, we have already done 2 shows on terrorism not long after the September 11th tragedy. But today we're going to, and quite frankly in a subsequent show because the material is just too much to get into one show, today we're going to focus on what Oklahoma is doing to fight terrorism. Our prior shows kind of told what we're doing about being defensive about what had happened. This is more offensive. What are we doing to fight terrorism, including, in some respects, bioterrorism? Now, with those fights comes some legal issues, some problems with how does a state's effort to protect its citizens impinge on the rights of its citizens.
Constitutional.
Constitutional. All kinds of questions about profiling, about holding people, about searching people, about infringing what some would say are their civil liberties in the name of keeping everyone safer. So it's not an easy question. It's certainly not an easy subject, but we are going to be assisted greatly with the 2 guests we have, because we have an old friend, Dr. Leslie Beitsch, who's on the terrorism committee, and we have also Ken Levit, whom our viewers have not seen before. He is president of OU Tulsa, and he is chairman of the Homeland Security Task Force of Oklahoma. So he is the boss man for security in Oklahoma, and we'll hear what he has to say.
How do we fight terrorism and not infringe on our individual rights as citizens? We'll meet our guests and get to it after a short break. This is The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Kent Myers.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an allied artist.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leading at 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go. Wiggins had to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, who's going to introduce our guests.
Pleased greatly to have these two guests with us today. On my left is Ken Levit. Ken is President, OU Tulsa. Ken is Chairman of the Homeland Security Task Force for the state of Oklahoma. And of course, that's principally why he's with us today to talk about the terrorism defense efforts. Ken comes well equipped for this. He has a CIA background. For 2 years, he was special counsel to the director of the CIA. He graduated from Brown University and Yale Law School. He and I practiced law together for a couple of years, and he got a lot of his CIA training there at our law firm.
For sure.
But we are really pleased to have you, Ken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
On my right is a frequent visitor and a very welcome guest, Dr. Leslie Beitsch, the Commissioner of Health in Oklahoma. Dr. Beitsch also is involved in the terrorism effort in that he is on the governor's task force on terrorism. He is working to work out plans about what the health department's response will be in the event of a terrorist attack in Oklahoma that affects a lot of Oklahomans, and he is a very frequent guest on The Verdict, but never wears out his welcome. We're really pleased you're back again.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Mick, let me start with Ken and just ask you, what is the Homeland Security Task Force?
Well, shortly after 9/11, the legislative leadership, President of the Senate, Stratton Taylor, and the Speaker of the House, Larry Adair, came together and convened a terrorism task force for Homeland Security, joined of both the House and the Senate of the state of Oklahoma, Democrat, Republican, and they put 3 non-legislators on the task force as well. Myself, Professor Sajit Chinoy, who's a computer security expert at the University of Tulsa, and also a very knowledgeable person, General Denny Reimer, former Chief of Staff of the Army and runs the Memorial Institute for the Prevention of Terrorism in Oklahoma City. And our effort essentially was to come together and recommend to the legislature what is it that we can do in Oklahoma to advance the cause of Homeland Security, specifically looking at legislative actions, looking at appropriations, surveying the rest of the country for creative ideas, because Oklahoma is not alone in this effort. Practically every state has mounted a Homeland Security effort, and many of them are also looking at what we have done in Oklahoma in the past. In the wake of the Murrah bombing, we've gotten a leg up as a state in responding to terrorism, but clearly 9/11 puts a new challenge in front of us, and our task force has met several times. We've made some key findings, and I think in a good position to advise the legislature for some important, innovative initiatives in this legislative year to advance Homeland Security.
Let me focus just a little bit more on Ken Levit for a second.
Okay, that's not interesting.
Okay. Well, it depends on what you tell, I guess. But you were with the CIA for a couple of years. Do you find that your training at the CIA and what you experienced there has prepared you for this challenge?
Well, the role that I'm playing with the legislative task force is to bring some expertise to bear, but also to coordinate, because there's a lot of expertise on the panel itself among the legislators and the other members. I was able, in the years that I was at the CIA, about 3 as special counsel to the director, the issue of terrorism was really front and center. There were many worries about a lot of different issues, Russia, China, North Korea, Iraq, Iran, but nothing like the terrorist issue, and nothing like Osama bin Laden. His al-Qaeda network it didn't just appear on the screen on September 11th.
You knew about it long before.
The very first week I was there, was invited to a strategy session about the effort against bin Laden. In 1996, before I think many people knew in America about Osama bin Laden, the CIA set up a secret office in a secret location dedicated to one person and his top officers. That's bin Laden and al-Qaeda. And some of the finest officers in the CIA were dedicated to that effort. It was the subject which we wrote to the president, I'd say every day, about bin Laden, what we knew about him, what we thought his next steps were. This was a very dangerous person that we were quite well aware of. And it didn't take a great level of clandestinity to know it. His own words, his fatwas, that started to be initiated in 1997, basically said that his goal, the goal of al-Qaeda, were simply to kill as many Americans as possible, and he declared it a religious duty for Muslims everywhere to acquire, develop, and implement weapons of mass destruction.
Is he still alive?
Well, nobody really knows the answer to that question. I think if he is alive, we'll hear from him soon. His MO is to appear on the screen. His great goal is to rally the Arab streets in the capitals of Saudi Arabia, to Indonesia, to Jordan, in a worldwide movement. So his vitality is an important message to send if he's alive, and I'm sure in the next few weeks, if he's alive, we'll know about it pretty clearly.
Dr. Beitsch, contrast what Ken is doing on the Homeland Security Task Force with what you're doing on the Governor's Task Force.
I'd be happy to. But first I want to hear more about what Ken was talking about. That was extremely interesting. What we're working on that task force, which is chaired by the Governor's Chief of Staff, Howard Barnett, there are a bunch of other members, the Commissioner of Public Safety, the Adjutant General, several other people from the Department of Health, Attorney General Drew Edmondson, Corporations Commission Chairman, Commissioner Denise Bodie. We're looking at several different aspects, but we're focused predominantly right now on bioterrorism. But the issue first that we're looking at is one of security. How do we actually prevent terrorism and bioterrorism in particular within the boundaries of the great state of Oklahoma? And secondly, if bioterrorism occurs, how do we identify it promptly and respond well?
Okay. We're going to have a show in subsequent weeks on bioterrorism, so I'd like to stay focused on security. What are you finding in Oklahoma as the security level of preparedness?
Well, if I had to hazard a guess, and that's what I'm doing here right now, I would think that Oklahoma is somewhat better prepared than other states by virtue of having experienced a weapons of mass destruction terrorism event in 1995. And I think that's at the back of everyone's mind in this state. And as a result, I think certain goals have been accomplished here that may not have really happened in other places around.
Are we talking about education, Dr. Beitsch, for the general citizenry, or is this mainly for our emergency personnel?
No, I think it's really at some level got to involve every citizen. If we think about the entire state and how vast it is in terms of geographic area, there is no way that a state official or a National Guard member or even members of the Homeland Security Task Force can really be out there patrolling all of Oklahoma. People who live here have to be cognizant of unusual events, changes in people's behavior, and really be alert to signals that something may be very different. And we've had a lot of discussion over the last months about international travel by air. There's no real reason to think that would be the only target.
Let me jump in here and get us to a break. We're discussing terrorism and how it affects Oklahomans. We'll be right back. This is The Verdict.
Campfire USA candy sale. Must be that time of year again.
Would you like to buy some Campfire USA candy?
Well, where does the money go?
Your support helps Campfire create fun, educational programs for us.
Oh, hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Mr. Higgins. Would you like to buy some Campfire USA candy to help us on our way to camp?
Sure, guys. You know this one.
For nearly a century, Campfire USA. Today's kids, tomorrow's leaders.
It's for the kids.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
Yesterday was plain awful.
You can say that
On Broadway is Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company.
Bringing our daughter here was one of the smartest things we've ever done.
I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of confidence. They helped me develop talents I never knew I had.
And it's fun.
On Broadway, Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company. Now enrolling in Edmond. Call 330-CAST. That's 330-2278.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. when these children raise their hands to be heard. Is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
We're back on The Verdict discussing terrorism. And Kent, where are we here in this issue?
I wanted Ken to tell our viewers and the rest of our panel members here, what is it the Homeland Security Task Force is getting ready to do or is proposing to do?
Well, we have a series of recommendations that the legislature will consider, and I would highlight some of the main ones as being coordinating in nature. I think it's very important that we focus the Homeland Security effort in the state of Oklahoma in the form of a Homeland Security coordinator, not a czar to take over all the resources of the Commissioner of the Public Health or Public Safety, but a coordinator role. We're finding that in this country there's got to be better coordination among the states and the federal level and among states within the state and with the municipalities.
Is that more than simply sharing information?
Sharing information is key, and sharing classified information so that the FBI has a place to go that they can give actionable intelligence to to a person that's trusted. And that's why I think a Homeland Security coordinator can fit that bill. But also the monumental nature of this task.
Are you talking about one person?
Well, I think you could have a small office, one person and a couple other people, essentially coordinating the efforts
kind of like
Commissioner
Tom
of Public
Ridge
Health.
Does,
yeah, although I think it's important not to have expectations that this is a czar-like figure with an enormous budget who's going to solve this problem. We need somebody who has a relationship with the federal government. For instance, do you know how many foreign nationals, legal foreign nationals, come to the United States every year? 400 million, over 1 million a day, legally. People who come to work to visit. 2,000 INS agents can't have their arms around that problem. 600,000 cops have a chance. So that's why the states, the communities have to have a role. But it can't be completely dispersed and disparate. I think it's important to have a concentrated effort, a cabinet-level position, a high-level position that's coordinating the resources of the state, that's putting this issue in front of the legislature every year to say, we have a security plan, here it is, it costs this much, this year we made this much progress on it, next year we'd like to take the next step. And it focuses the country's attention, in Oklahoma, focuses our state's attention on the problem. And we benchmark it, and we make progress along it every year.
You mentioned coordination. Dr. Beitsch, I presume your task force has been coordinating with Ken's task force.
We have, and we have a common member, General Dennis Reimer, who is on both task forces, serving as a liaison. And several of us have actually appeared before the Homeland Security Task Force to testify on a variety of issues.
Well, how do you view ultimately what your task force is going to do? Ken's been fairly specific in legislative recommendations for legislation, since that's the genesis of the task force in the first instance. Do you report principally to the governor, and is that what
our work is for the governor, and I think there will be some recommendations, but in a similar vein to what I think Ken's reported, is there's an understanding within our panel that there needs to be one person also responsible for pulling the efforts together annually as it relates to responding to bioterrorism, for example. And our office would have the lead in a response once bioterrorism is actually found to be present. But there are regular activities in terms of planning and so on, and most of those activities are done by the Office of Civil Emergency Management. Albert Ashwood does a terrific job there, and we think that makes a lot of sense, and that will probably be a recommendation that will come from our group. And Albert, by the way, is on that panel, and I left his name out earlier. My apologies, Albert.
Ken, I wanted to ask you about the American universities educating students from the Middle East. In general, is that a good idea? Is that something we should rethink after 9/11?
Well, we should continue. We have a great tradition of educating people from all over the world. In fact, if there's one place to which the world sends its students, it's the United States of America, because we have the greatest higher education system in the world. And I think it goes a long way to explaining our greatness in the world and our leadership position. But we have to be cautious. Our universities are vulnerable places. There are sensitive technologies there. There are sensitive lab materials there. We have to look at our universities and protect it with greater attentiveness. The United States is engaged in an effort to revamp the immigration laws, to understand better the gaps that exist in the student visa issues. And I think the federal government is the best place to address immigration policy. And in fact, the Supreme Court has pretty much said that it is. I know that in my programs at OU in Tulsa, some of our most exciting, most innovative, most technologically promising programs have a lot of foreign nationals in them, in their students and in their teachers. I don't think it would be a mistake for our country to shut down in that sense, but there's more we can do as far as protecting the universities, and also the federal government needs to get a much better handle on the foreign visa, the student visa issue. It's frankly a mess. We've lost the ability to track what happens to the students once they come here, and one of the recommendations that our panel is making to the legislature also involves enhancements to our driver's license processes, digitization, more information being disclosed to the state about citizenship status that can then be fed to the federal government so that we have a better database information about where citizens are, where foreign nationals are as far as their travel to the United States.
You read recently about the 9/11 terrorist that died who had traveled in Oklahoma and was picked up by a highway patrolman several months before the event. Would some of the digitization of driver's licenses that you mentioned, would that have perhaps identified this person more fully than otherwise was done?
Well, I think if you had that kind of technology, you'd certainly have more information. That's not to say you would have stopped the attacks from taking place. You know, it's amazing. People say, why couldn't the CIA have had a mole in Al-Qaeda, in bin Laden's inner circle? Then we could have stopped this. Remember bin Laden bragging on that tape to his Saudi friend. He says, you know, my own spokesman didn't even know about the attack before it took place. And he says most of the hijackers didn't even know what was happening to them until they got on the plane. So you say to yourself, well, what if we had a mole that had recruited the spokesman of bin Laden? What if we had arrested 5 or 10 of the 19 hijackers before they ever got on the plane? Would we have stopped it? Would we have known about it? Maybe, maybe not. These guys are very good, unfortunately.
But can I also respond, Ken,
yes,
briefly to you? What I think we might have seen, and again, I'm no expert on INS laws, nor do I profess to be, if we had visas that, you know, instead of expiring, that someone actually knew when that happened, then if that person's identified and comes up, we would know that he also had an outstanding visa and would probably be asked to leave the country at that point because his student visa was no longer active. So would that have prevented the event? I mean, I think Ken's answer is a much better one. But there are ways to track the people who are entering our country to be students. And if they drop out of school and go on to do something else, they need to have an additional visa and other permission to be in our country or leave.
Just a few seconds left. Do you have a final quick question?
Just quickly, fight against terrorism, infringing individual rights. It's going to happen, isn't it?
Well, I think we're at a particularly volatile period in our history. I think that the laws that we're seeing passed have important sunset provisions. I think people are making every effort. I know our committee heard from the ACLU, heard from the Oklahoma Press Association. I think there's a great deal of sensitivity in the country to individual liberties, not infringing on good citizens. I think we'll thread that needle.
You can strike that balance.
Ken Levit, thanks for coming by. Dr. Leslie Beitsch, we appreciate you both. We'll have you on a future show, and we'll discuss bioterrorism on that show. Kent and I'll be back with a final word after this.
Hello, my name is Ted Smith. I'm president of the board of directors of the Oklahoma Disability Law Center. ODLC provides free legal services in civil matters to people with physical and mental disabilities.
I'm Mike Sykes, Vice President of ODLC. For more information, call 1-800-880-7755.
The Oklahoma Disability Law Center provides high-quality legal services to people with physical and mental disabilities.
Boy Scouts of America, where above all else, character counts.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're wrapping up another edition of The Verdict. Some final thoughts on our terrorism in Oklahoma show.
Interesting show. Lots of efforts going on in Oklahoma. It's good to see that these legislative and gubernatorial efforts are being coordinated. They're all moving toward the same goal of fighting terrorism rather than just laying back and accepting the next blow, which apparently many predict actually will come, perhaps not to Oklahoma, but to the United States. In the process, however, we've got to be cognizant of individual rights and individual liberties, right to privacy, right to movement, freedom of speech. Some of these things, by necessity in a wartime mode, have to be curtailed somewhat, and that is...
You need the public's cooperation to get this accomplished.
Well, you really do, and there seems to be a fine balance being struck here by those exercising these efforts to try to bring the terrorism threat more under control, to make sure that only the rights are limited to the extent that are absolutely necessary and no more. And so I think our citizens can have some heart that this thing is really being done by experts in an expert fashion.
Just enough time for me to mention our website. It is www.theverdict.tv. Go there, send us an email telling us what you think about this show or any show that you'd like to see in the future. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict. This program was brought to you by Crow and Dunlevy, a professional corporation. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.